Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Moshe Heller. I'm from the Moshen Center in New York and also representing Moshen Herbs and Jingshen Pediatrics. Um, I would like to thank the American Acupuncture Council for allowing me to share this information with you. And it would be great if we can start the first slides. So I've been practicing Chinese medicine for the last 30 years, and today I want to talk about something that's very much on everybody's mind, which is GLP-1s. GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic and Zepbound have been taking the world in a storm, uh, patients are asking about it. Colleagues are discussing it, and it's a very big buzzword, and so everybody's talking about it. And the mechanisms behind them are deeply related to things that we do on a daily basis with our patients. So that's what I want to demonstrate. The title Dampness and Phlegm and Fat is intentional. I want to sort of demonstrate that Chinese medicine has been sort of discussing this idea, these metabolic conditions for thousands of years. And we've just been using a different language. We don't use the word GLP-1, we use other terms, which we'll discuss. So, over the next few minutes, I want to talk. I'm going to walk you through the frameworks of obesity and metabolic syndrome and talk about the different aspects and how it relates to GLP-1 and Chinese medicine. But I think one of the great advantages of our medicine, and that's very important to remember, is that one of our clinical advantages is that we actually have the ability to personalize treatment to the individual patient. And so it's almost like this, we have a built-in personalized medicine process. So, just to kind of correlate a little bit, we're going to talk about three basic patterns in Chinese medicine, which is spleen qi deficiency. We will all know that. That's the root cause of dampness is always spleen qi deficiency because it accumulates transformation and transportation if it's weak, and the fluids are not metabolized correctly and nutrients, and therefore dampness can accumulate. We also have the second pattern is phlegm obstruction, which is also very common pattern that we diagnose when dampness is congealed and impedes the flow of qi and disrupts Shen and contributes to weight gain and metabolic sluggishness. So phlegm is a very, very important concept that we have to remember when we're dealing with our patients with metabolic issues, especially because phlegm can be hidden and not necessarily on the surface, and we have ways to diagnose it. Liver qi stagnation is the third pattern. That's a very, very common pattern. Everybody knows it, but it really has an effect on disrupting digestion, peristalsis function, and affects appetite regulation. We can have cravings. We can have created by liver qi stagnation, and it generates heat that can transform dampness into phlegm. So, just sort of summarizing what we just covered, the spleen qi deficiency always, or we can map it to insulin resistant and impaired glucose metabolism. Phlegm obstruction affects the visceral adipose tissue and inflammatory cytokines, and also and liver qi stagnation affects cortisol dysregulation, stress driven overeating, and also hypothyroid, and low basal metabolic rate, which ties into maybe some kidney heart imbalance also in the background. So before we move forward, I just want to kind of summarize or give you an idea of what is GLP-1, sort of bridging the idea between East and West. So GLP-1 is an incretin hormone. There's a few incretin hormones that are secreted by the L cells in the gut, but GLP-1 is one of them. And it is secreted by the gut lining, especially after eating, and it signals, or it affects the fact that signals that we are full to the brain. So that's one aspect. It also affects insulin secretion. Stimulates glucose-dependent insulin and that's released from the pancreatic beta cells. So it goes out and affects the pancreas, and it stimulates it to really help regulate glucose metabolism and levels. It also affects appetite regulation by acting on the hypothalamus and reducing hunger and slowing down gastric emptying. And the last thing is that it has a metabolic effect, and it reduces glucagon, which improves the beta cell function and supports weight loss. In TCM lens, the GLP-1, we can say, mirrors the TCM principles of tonifying spleen qi, resolving phlegm and dampness, and harmonizing the digestive axis, meaning the relationship between the spleen and the stomach. So I want to give you a few examples of herbs that help to regulate hunger and support the GLP-1. These are just examples. There's many. The list is very long. If you do even a simple Google search, you'll hit many of the herbs. So I'm giving you just a few samples of that idea. The first one is huluba, which is fenugreek seeds, which is a herb that's been used in many areas in the world, Asia, Middle East. It's used a lot, and it's sort of considered a very healthy food to help control hunger and society, and also help in regulating blood sugar. So huluba is in the category of warming the kidney yang and dispersing cold, and it contains this substance called 4-hydroxy isoleucine, which stimulates insulin secretion and has demonstrated GLP-1 potentiating effect and slow carbohydrate absorption via its soluble fiber. So it's very rich in soluble fiber if you eat it as a seed. And so it's not something we use a lot in our diet, but it's something that we can actually teach our patients to include in their diet because it's a very healthy food substance also. Then we have the lotus flower, which is lian hua, which clears heat and resolves dampness and lifts the spleen qi. And luciferin and other alkaloids modulate lipid metabolism, which is very high in this herb is very high in luciferin, and it reduces the adipogenesis and supports feeling of fullness and signaling, and also strong spleen tonic in the context of phlegm dampness. So it has a lot of these functions also. The third herb I want to discuss is sha shen, which is glenia, And I've always been seeing Shashan being used in many formulas that help to reduce excess appetite. But it really is, as a yin tonic, addresses yin deficiency, or stomach yin deficiency, which is a common pattern that I diagnose. And it really pertains to this feeling of knowing or perpetually feeling hungry despite eating. And it supports the mucosal health of the GI tract, which is a key for GLP cell function. So, supporting the the mucosal part of the GI tract is a very important. It has a very strong relation to GLP-1 function. I also wanted to add two kind of other herbs that we don't necessarily think of them so much, but they're very important for fat metabolism and phlegm resolution, and also help with regulation um, 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 of the lipids in our blood. So the Honghua has this substance called hydroxysafflor yellow A, which activates AMPK pathways, the same energy sensing mechanism targeted by metformin, if you know that drug, addresses the blood stasis. Of course, it moves blood and often accompanies metabolic syndrome formulas and supports lipid clearance and circulation. So again, lipid metabolism is very important and is part of this idea of reducing dampness and phlegm, not only in our body but also in our blood system. And the last one that I want to discuss actually has is linger. It's the reishi mushroom, which tonifies qi and shen, calms the mind, and resolves phlegm in that category. And it has different polysaccharides and tetrapens that modulate adipogenesis and reduce visceral fat accumulation and supports gut microbiome diversity. So it's a critical for which is critical for GLP-1 production. It addresses different Shen, or this kind of relationship between the gut and the brain and our emotional state, and also can address different metabolic conditions in our body. So these are another two really important herbs when we are talking about metabolic issues. I also wanted to point out some acupuncture and metabolic mechanisms. We have hypothalamic regulation by stomach 36, CV12, and pericardium 6. So there is a study that shows that when you use electroacupuncture on stomach 36, it regulates our and modulates our metabolic, and actually the GLP-1 numbers go up, and so we can actually see the numbers in some studies, published studies, that are very important. But we know that, right, that stomach 36, CV12, and pericardium 6 help to regulate um, the our metabolic process, our spleen deficiency, our spleen's ability to transform and transport and resolve phlegm and dampness. For insulin sensitivity, we use points like spleen 9, bladder 20, and bladder 23. It improves peripheral insulin receptors sensitivity and reduces inflammatory markers, and it's associated, which might be associated with some insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. Again, we know that these points have a strong effect on our digestive system, and there are the studies that show us that that's the thing. So again, I wanted to show an idea of how we would use all this information in a personalized treatment, meaning that we will have to see what kind of diagnosis we come up with, and therefore associated with a specific formula, and also a set of points. But I just demonstrated the formulas. For example, if we have spleen deficiency and dampness, we'll use Shenling Baidusan as our base, and we could add herbs like Huluba and Lianhua and Baiju to kind of support that process or redirect it. If we have liver qi stagnation accompanying together with some phlegm and heat, we can use Xiaoyao San and add Lingzhi, Huanglian, and Zhizi. And also, if we have kidney yang deficiency and cold phlegm, we can use a variation of Yu Gui one and also add Huluba. And if we have blood stasis and phlegm obstruction, we can use as a base Shui Fu Tzu Yu Tang and add Honghua, sort of like to address the metabolic syndrome with cardiovascular component. Stomach yin deficiency and deficiency heat, the famous formula Yi Wei Tang, and which includes Shashen in it, addresses hungry but unsatisfied pattern and cools deficiency heat or deficiency heat in general. So I want to point out one really cool study that was, I saw this company called Calocurb, which is based in New Zealand. They had they made a research on hops, which is a specific kind of hops that's grown in New Zealand. They made a huge research that was supported by the Plant and Food Research Association with $30 million of government research. They looked at the mechanisms of the bitter taste. Now, bitter taste, and reduction of hunger has been, been used in many countries and cultures. For example, there are hunters in Africa that chew different bitter berries to maintain their low need for food, as an example. And there's examples like this all over the world. But the bitter taste receptor is, they studied this bitter taste receptor, which is present in the tongue, but also in the small intestine, called TAS2R. Those receptor trigger the L cells to release GLP-1, CCK, and PYY, which is kind of this kind of helps regulate feeling of fullness and satiety, and helps with regulating the digestive slow emptying in the stomach. So what we saw is that when they did this and they gave the hops, there was an elevation of GLP-1 from baseline by 600%. It reduced reduction in craving of about 40%, reduction in hunger 30%, and reduction in calorie intake by 18%. So it's really interesting study that demonstrates what we already know for years. As you know, in terms of 5-element, the bitter taste enters the heart and descends to the small intestine and can affect the digestive system through that. And also, we know it clears heat and helps in draining dampness. So these are very important things. The herb hops in Chinese medicine is called Pi Hua, and it also has a bitter taste and regulates the liver, calms the Shen, and enters the stomach meridian. So that I brought this study just as a way for you to kind of tie things together with research and what we have been doing. I also wanted to just bring our kind of this demonstrates what we've been talking about. If any of you have been following me in Jingshen Pediatrics, we know we talk about this neurogastroimmune axis, the idea that our immune system, our digestive system, and our neurological system are all connected, and we can sort of chart it in this kind of relationship between wood, earth, and metal. And I've created this chart for you um, to kind of look at the signs and symptoms that or how we kind of map this, so you can have a map of the different aspects of that. So always remember this relationship, and I think one of the most important things that we learn in our course in Jinshin Pediatrics is that once a baby is born, we're setting up his mechanisms of digestion by introducing different tastes and how we work on regulating the appetite and the meal schedule. So these are very important things that we're set up by early exposures to how we react to foods. So I'll conclude here. I want to say that Chinese medicine is not a simple mimic of GLP-1. It addresses the root patterns that determine why each patient accumulates dampness and phlegm or has other imbalances and different patterns to cause them to end up with having too much fat or having a metabolic syndrome, etc., etc. So careful diagnosis is always important. By combining targeted herbal formulas with acupuncture, we can support GLP-1 pathways, modulate appetite, enhance fat metabolism, and treat the whole pattern. So our medicine offers pharmaceuticals or medicinals. What pharmaceuticals cannot offer, it's a personalized adaptive strategy that evolves with the patient, because as the pattern changes, we change the formula and the treatment. If you want any more information about any of this, please, I have the websites of all three entities below, and you can contact me. I also want to thank the American Acupuncture Council for letting me share this information with you, and I look forward to seeing you again in future presentations.